I'm Rory Stewart, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Penrith and the Border. My experience in Afghanistan and in Iran and Turkey was that as you crossed a border, for example, from Turkey where everybody drank coffee, at the millimetre edge of the borderline, suddenly you entered a land where everybody drank tea. And then when you crossed from Iran into Afghanistan, they went from black tea to green tea, and from Afghanistan to Pakistan, green tea to tea with milk and sugar in it. Now, none of these things can be explained by ethnicity. These are ethnic groups who spill across these borders, single families who spill across the borders. But somehow this funny administrative boundary defines culture. Well, I think Scottish nationalism originally was part of a general European nationalist movement. It began really as having a lot of the features of 19th century East European nationalism, Romanian nationalism, Hungarian nationalism, Czech nationalism. But it lasted well beyond a time when those forms of nationalism ceased to be appealing. It made it through the Second World War, very unusual for nationalism to do that. And it made it through in a very odd context, because unlike the Basque or the Catalan or the Flemish nationalisms, it wasn't arranged around language or a clear sense of ethnic difference. It was arranged instead around this funny borderline. And from that point onwards, it kept reinventing itself. The only thing that it ever had in common was the idea that Scotland should separate from the rest of the United Kingdom. But the question of why, what Scotland was or what the United Kingdom was, changed continually. I think without the Roman wall, there simply would not be a Scotland and England. The Roman wall was the most extraordinary traumatic scar across the centre of Britain. It took these very much related tribal peoples who were scattered up and down in an island whose natural boundary was the sea, and scoured a deep divide for 300 years, and then left these stone objects in this very bleak, treeless countryside where everybody could see them. I mean, right up to 1700, the most visible dramatic element of the landscape for 1,400 years was this wall. What we now know, these things standing about an inch off the ground, is really just a product of 19th, 20th century looting, and created the whole idea of soft southerners and barbarian northerners, created all the distinctions that people exploited. In some sense, of course, border people are Scots and self-identify as being Scots, and there isn't a cross-border identity. I mean, I think that's, or at least it's difficult to find out what it is. I think there was, going back in the day, 1400s, 1500s, the people on the English and Scottish sides of the border would have seemed very similar. The kinds of activities they did, the ways they thought about themselves. Now it's difficult to believe that the people of Penrith have much more in common with the people of Selkirk than they do with the people of Preston or the people of Perth. But your question's a good one, because I think there is also a sense in which the border identity of Scotland doesn't have very much to do with a lot of the central identity of Scotland, which is driven from Glasgow and Edinburgh. I suppose the rawest, richest example of it I found was around the what used to be called the Central Marches, in other words, bang in the middle of the border, west of the Kielder Forest, which is this huge spreading mass of 200,000 acres of Sitka spruce, where on the English side of the border are tiny 100-acre farms which have been occupied, it seems, almost forever. And on the Scottish side of the border, as soon as you cross the border, these large 2,000-acre tenanted estate farms. And there you really do feel the ways in which history, landowning patterns have begun to drive things apart. What you actually feel is that the Scottish side of the border oddly feels much more modern than the English side of the border, that it's moved much more rapidly away from a traditional farming culture, that it's, oddly, although Scots talk much more about history in the English, although they have border ridings, the actual structure of their life, the structure of the soil, the structure of the farming landscape is much more modern than on the English side of the border.